Okay, so maybe you can give a little bit of introduction for Leonid. So as you know, the purpose of this meeting was to start a discussion around how to support gNOI in ONOS. gNOI is the third interface of Stratum. The third in the sense that it's usually mentioned as the last one. You find time gNOI and gNOI, and this is the last one that we have to implement in ONOS, as we already have support for P4 and time and initial support for gNOI. And so what's happening is that PLVision, member company of Stratum, who's contributing gNOI support also on the Stratum side, decided to also contribute the same to ONOS. So I invited Leonid and his team to give a presentation on that. And I think Leonid has some slides to show. Right. Yeah. So maybe we can give presentation right to Leonid. Yeah.
Okay. Please let me know when you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
I'm just not that used to Windows way of GoToMeeting. In any case, so greetings everyone. Thanks for changing the schedule of your regular meetings and coming to presentation of the proposal. Quick recap of what I'm going to talk about today. Brief overview of gNOI, then what we have already done for Stratum on gNOI side as well. Actually, it was one of the key motivations to join ONOS efforts and provide gNOI support, to have some way to configure Stratum via this interface. And then I will go through our proposal on design and architecture for ONOS. It will be followed by a sample application to make use of the new interface implemented, and later we will go talk about timelines and goals we are going to achieve. So feel free to interrupt me when you have a question, and I'm starting to moving on. Few words about gNOI. So gNOI is defined under OpenConfig initiative. It is gRPC-based interface. Right now, there is no young models defined for it. It is basically a set of proto definitions which provides interfaces to perform operations on a device. From my point of view, the operations fall into big categories: administrative operations, like working with file system, doing certificate management, some diagnostics, and generic system configuration, like reboot, software update, ping, etc. And network operations, there are some protocol-related configuration options, mostly focused on resetting state of the protocol, resetting counters, things like that. Now a little bit about Stratum side. So as you know, probably a pioneer exit phase is coming quite soon, and this table just represents what is supposed to be covered. So system side of gNOI services will be provided on exit of the pioneer phase, and the rest of the services is supposed to go into the open source version of the Stratum. So that's why today I will be focused mostly on the capabilities provided by the system proto. It is reboot, set package for software update, ping, traceroute, generic administrative things you can do with the device. Moving to the ONOS side, so the goal is to enable ONOS with gNOI interface and use Stratum as a first target for it. And it will provide basic device management operations, mostly focused on device lifecycle management. As a sample application, we are going to experiment with software update application, which will take devices under ONOS control and gradually update them, reboot, and get back in the operation. Going next into the details on the ONOS implementation. So at the core layer, we are going to define few new behavior interfaces, like software upgrade, system reboot, system troubleshoot. Then those interfaces will be implemented by gNOI driver. It will perform device handshake and establish connection to a particular device, and will use protocol implementation as a client wrapper to call a device. So besides it, we are going to implement system CLI to manually execute and validate those newly introduced behavior interfaces.
So your driver's going to have a persistent connection to the device that all those behaviors will use that same connection?
I don't think so. To the best of my understanding, right now, while we experimented with gNOI, each time we make a call, a new connection, a new TCP connection is created, and once we made a transaction, meaning called an API, it's being closed.
Okay.
I'll need to take a closer look at the Java implementation. Right now I'm talking about either C++ or Python.
Okay, thank you.
So, quick question, and maybe Carmelo can jump in here, but was the plan to build this on top of the gRPC protocol stack, where connection management and connection longevity will be managed by something else?
I think this is the case. I think this is shown in the next slide.
Okay.
I guess it's not shown in the. Oh, it's not shown here. I remember seeing a slide from Leonid.
So we are going to use a generic gRPC client, and I think most of the code is already in place, and add on top of it gNOI capabilities. Right now, the plan is to have several gNOI clients, each per proto definition. For instance, we have system proto defined for administrative services, and we'll have a gNOI system client which use generic gRPC to establish connectivity to a particular device and run certain commands on top of it. So basically, we will translate proto definitions into API implementations and then use them to provide pretty the same Java APIs to the driver level. I just does it answer your question, or? Okay.
Maybe I can clarify something really quick. I think this answers Brian's question. Because by extending this abstract gRPC pollarity and controller, these two things are part of what we call the gRPC protocol stack in ONOS. That, also answering to David Bainbridge's question, does a very simple management of the gRPC channel. Now, in gNOI, for example, what we do, we create a channel instance for each of this protocol. Actually, we could share the same channel instance, but right now we create two. And once you create a channel in gRPC, there's no really concept of having the connection open or close. Actually, the management of the connection itself is transparent. You simply request RPCs on a channel, and then the gRPC internal decides, if it's time to open the HTTP2 session, or if it's already open, to reuse that. So this is completely transparent, I would say, from in this case, from the driver perspective.
Makes sense. Thanks.
One question, Leonid, can you go back to the previous slide? Maybe you're going to talk about this later. I don't know. So my expectation is that there would be some configuration on a given device that you decide to reboot. So how do you handle that? How do you handle save of state, configuration state, and then re-addition of the same configuration state on that device?
That's a good question. Honestly, I didn't give a thought to it so far. I think the state of the device, we need basically another gNOI API for it. So to tell a device like save configuration, it puts it in a persistent storage, and then after a boot, it recovers it back, like we used to have in most of the devices right now. So probably this is, I would address it from the gNOI functionality point of view.
Okay, so you're not planning to do any of this inside ONOS, is that correct?
Well, I'm not planning, right now I'm not planning to add it as a part of a reboot command, and I think it might be a responsibility of the device. So I'm trying to recall what would happen to Stratum when a reboot call is placed via gNOI. So I think operational configuration would be in the storage, but some runtime data will be lost. Meaning, if there are some kind of flows configured, it will not persist definitely after reboot.
I see. Okay, thanks.
Okay, then I'm moving on to the details of gNOI system client implementation. Basically, this duplicates what have been defined in system proto gNOI definition, set of APIs which will be used by driver layer to implement new behaviors. I don't want to stop much on this. I think APIs is self-describing, and there is no reason to talk much about it. Now, talking about driver implementation. So it will use gNOI clients implemented on a protocol layer, and will implement new behaviors. It will take control of establishing contexts, connections to the device, and will invoke proper commands on the protocol layer. So I think the generic behaviors would have simpler interfaces, and the task of the driver level would be to properly translate it to gNOI calls. Talking about system behaviors, right now we suggest to add the following behavior interfaces. System time, it's just the most simple definition we have in the proto. It just returns current time on the device. Then reboot to cover different reboot modes, network troubleshoot to run ping or trace route on the device, and software upgrade. It will be called for either set package or switch control processor. I was surprised that the interfaces already exist, but I haven't seen it somewhere implemented. So maybe it is a subject for a different conversation, but if anyone knows background on this interface, I would be glad to know to avoid any interference or.
So that was the effort of Laszlo from Uber Schuner Pilates. I guess that was more than a year ago, at least a year ago. I can put you in contact with him if you're interested. To see if I know he had an implementation. I think he never finished it, but the behavior was there, at least from an API perspective.
Well, that would be definitely great, just to align with someone who did previous work and not to break the implementations. So on top of those behaviors, we are going to implement reboot command, upgrade command, sample get time command, and use gNOI system implementation as a class that will provide this. Now I'm going to talk a little bit further about how to use it. We'd like to experiment a little bit with building an application on top of this interface. So we would like to try and perform update on a fabric, take a set of switches, take them off the operation one by one, provide a new firmware image or software package for it, update, reboot, and get back into the operation. So some kind of application to experiment and to demonstrate capabilities of the newly introduced interface. This diagram just provides a high-level algorithm of steps we are going to take to update a particular device, and it is going to be an iterational process in which we will go through devices list, update them one by one, and get them back to operational mode. Here I had a question. I tried to figure out how to properly suspend and resume a device under ONOS control. I've just found a device admin service, and there is only a to-do listed that such an interface would be great to have. So I just wonder if there is another way to do it, or it would be good to implement it there as well. Right now, this device admin service has remove device command method implemented, and a set of interfaces related to port management, like enable port, disable port, things like that.
It certainly should be possible to extend it. Normally, we use the default methods implementation to make sure that it remains backwards compatible. So it certainly should be possible to extend it with these operational aspects.
Okay, so then it sounds like it is
Another
place to put such an interface.
maybe another option that might not require adding interfaces would be to put the device offline, if that is possible through the device admin service. I cannot recall correctly, but we already have the online offline flag. Maybe that's worth reusing. That I was just pointing out.
Through the device admin service, you can either change port state or remove the device. So I think the ability to suspend it would also make sense to do here. So yeah.
Okay.
I think this would be a good place to tackle it.
In any case, this is we are going to experiment with this and see what is a better way and how to better fit in overall structure of the ONOS to make this happen. Just a few words about switch update application. We are going to where we are going to place it, just to align whether it is proper or not place to land it. So talking about timelines, so we think we are going to have gNOI component implementation which covers system proto early March 19. Then by the end of the March, we might be able to demonstrate some early version of the update application. The target for us was to early April to have some kind of demo case, so we can have probably another meeting to show you by early April how it works and operate. I think that's pretty it. I covered everything I would like to share today, and it's time for questions if there are any, or suggestions.
I don't really have any questions. I think this seems pretty straightforward. I think it would be very useful to have. But if others have questions, that would be great to ask them now.
Then I have one generic question. Probably you can advise what is a better way to introduce such kind of application. I studied Wiki a little bit on the review and contribution process, so probably some advice on how to get faster with reviews and implementation. So initially we decided to go bottom-up approach, but now it seems probably may be controversial. Maybe it is better to take some kind of vertical approach, implement a single function covering all the layers, and then go and extend it. So this is a place I'd like to hear some advice or suggestion.
I see benefits to both approaches. Clearly, having the vertical approach gives you earlier validation of the the entire methodology without wasting too much energy. And it certainly would be, it's easy to demonstrate, right, from a command line or from UI, the vertical slice through doing one particular operational aspect. So there's certainly benefit to that.
Okay, then probably we will follow this kind of vertical thing with some simple interface and then extend it with non-trivial.
You talked about adding CLI commands for this. Are you going to also augment a GUI application for this capability?
We have some. We started thinking about it. It would be great to have GUI for it. Still, it's in the kind of planning drafting process, so I'm not ready right now to share the details. I just have a few screenshots which might outline the idea. If you can comment on it or suggest what would be the proper, better place to add such kind of functionality to GUI, I would appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, I think GUI would be nice. The other nice thing is being sure to expose this via the REST API or a public API so that it could be orchestrated.
I agree. I think start with the CLI and REST API and then move on to the GUI. The GUI is kind of nice for demonstration purposes, but it's strictly not a must, right? It's mostly just really for purpose of demo. Because it's something on a show floor, people can relate to, but for operational aspects, most likely people are going to be using, as David said, REST API or other automation means.
Just a thought on my side. I'm gonna throw this out and see like discussion about it. How does that go? Would we be worth exploring the possibility of having this as an off-platform application, written and deployed as a sidekick to ONOS, in order for this work to be partially reused, at least within the new configuration subsystem that we're working on? Let me explain a little bit. So the idea is that instead of putting this in Java inside the ONOS code base, you would still have the behaviors, but you would probably expose, at least in my opinion, gNOI northbound, maybe, and talk from that application to that northbound, and that northbound translates them then to the behaviors. Because otherwise it's a lot of code developed in the application itself to do like, okay, let me stop this device, let me restart this device. That goes thrown away because in the future we might want to move to other platforms. Do you see my point?
So you suggest to expose those new behaviors externally to ONOS and then build an external application which take advantage of existing, for instance, REST APIs of ONOS and those new behaviors to perform this update procedure. Am I getting you right?
Yeah, I think that's what Andrea was suggesting. And let me give you a little bit of background. We're currently exploring creation of a new configuration management subsystem written entirely as this kind of a sidecar using microservices architecture, using off-the-shelf tools like YGOT and potentially written in Go. Basically starting to steer towards new generation SDN platform. And I think that's where Andrea was asking, because we will be covering not only configuration aspect, but also operational aspect. However, I think for you, the approach that you highlighted, which is using the existing ONOS, using Java, using the behaviors, you can get something done, as you indicated, probably in a month or so, on top of the existing platform and demonstrate that in ONS. So I would still recommend that you do what you intended to do. We will clearly have to do something similar for the new next generation platform. But I think the experiences that we gain in you doing that in a framework of existing ONOS architecture, I think that's good.
Okay, so we will follow initial plan, but still probably put some time in exploring possibilities of making an external application. Just need to go through what external APIs are available right now, and to understand how feasible it is at the moment. So it's another good idea.
Right. The thing is exactly, and we're currently still in a process of defining what we want the kind of the overall interfaces to be in the context of the next generation, and that would only slow you down for the time being. I think right now the exercise that you're suggesting is relatively straightforward, which is basically exploit the gNOI interfaces via the gRPC stack and implement a sort of behaviors which are specific to the gNOI operation semantics. Because the gNOI is a little bit different from gNMI. I mean, they're both based on gRPC, but the gNMI is very generic, and the data that it exchanges is based on structure based on Yang. The gNOI has very fixed semantics, and it's specific to very specific to certain kinds of operational specific operations, and I think that matches really well with the existing ONOS behaviors.
Yeah, I was just Thomas, you captured perfectly my idea, and thanks for that. I agree that the approach at the moment is fairly concise and can be done in a matter of weeks, and so that that is clearly the way forward. I was just throwing the idea out that at least we could learn the lessons and find out the pain points with the existing implementation that you guys will do, and understand what can be done in a more generic way, and can be done in such a way that these applications can then be reused and put on top of the next generation configuration and management and control that we are building.
Well, that's definitely is an interesting area to explore. We just need to invest a bit more time in it, and I think it once we have gNOI in place and behavior interfaces implemented, it would be much easier to experiment and try different options with the application. I think the applications themselves will not be that different. I mean, if we put it into the ONOS environment inside, or it is external, so the basic operations will be quite the same. And once we build gNOI behaviors, we can experiment moving this application outside of the ONOS.
Right.
Whatever.
Yeah, what I would suggest maybe leaving for the outside would be the high level operations, which comprise of the lower level ones. For example, in order to be able to upgrade a switch, in operations that would most likely involve suspending the switch, which means evacuating any workload from the switch, which means flows would have to be routed around that particular switch. Then the switch would have to be sort of taken, rebooted or updated, and then brought back administratively back online. And that high-level process, which involves some basically high-level business policies or high-level functions, that is something that could easily be written as an external application, which then interacts with the low-level administrative functions. Having the low-level operations be able to do the low-level ones, like suspend the switch, upgrade the switch, reboot the switch, and that sort of stuff, is extremely important, right? We can't do any of the other things without it.
Yeah, for sure.
So this is great.
So that's true. Then we are focusing on this basic set of operations. We are going to, we actually have in Stratum right now, and see how it fits in the wider picture.
Right. So I really like your approach. So this is good.
Yep.
Okay, then I left nothing to add. So we are moving ahead with the implementation.
Sounds great. So let us know when you need code reviews, and we'll try to expedite that.
Okay, great.
Is there any other questions or comments from the community? If not, well then I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you very much for this presentation and future contributions. It looks really interesting and exciting.
Thank you. Thank you for your time and coming. So we'll be waiting for your review comments quite soon, I hope.
Okay, great.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Leonid.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.